And hello, Internet Land. How are you doing? So I have a topic tonight, and this topic is good for me to talk about, or easy for me to talk about, because it's one of those things where been there, done that. With that said, I want to make it clear that I did not and do not support Donald Trump. I did not and do not support Hillary Clinton. I did not and do not support Barack Obama. I voted for Jerry Johnson, and prior to that I voted for Dr. Ron Paul. I am a lowercase l libertarian. I do not support any political parties, nor do I believe politicians should run as members of parties. They should run on their own merit as individuals. Now, I'm not, I hear a lot of stuff. I don't get into a lot of it because I'm like, it's nonsense, it's political BS. What you should do is Google 100 ways Republicans are just like Democrats. Also, Google 100 ways Obama was just like Bush. You'd be surprised how similar they really are. Really. And even if you don't want to admit it, it's not really like there are two main political parties. In my book, it's more like there's one. But anyway, people talking about shiest holes. Supposedly, Trump said something about places being shiest holes. Let me tell you something. I've lived in countries where it was common. For people to live in shacks that they built out of scrap wood and scrap metal. I've lived in countries where people lived inside the old walls, the old medieval walls. My hometown, as a matter of fact, people used to live inside the walls, and it was very bad. It was very moist. Tuberculosis was very common. At least it was then. Spain is very different today. Spain is not, what it once was, thankfully. No thanks to Franco. I mean, I grew up scared to death of that man. I don't know why, but I did. And, well, actually, I do know why. But, if you think living in a third world country is better than living in the United States, go live in that country. You want to live in El Salvador? Go for it. You know what it's really like in El Salvador? You know what it's really like in Venezuela? You know what it's really like in South Africa? Go there. Live there. If that's what you want, go live. The thing is, look at South Africa and look at Venezuela. These are socialist countries. You want socialism, and you got it with these two countries. There's a country in, can't remember the name of it. I think it's one of the Scandinavian countries. People say, well, it's a socialist country. No, it's not a socialist country. No, it's not, because the people have the right to vote. And people are actually starting to vote more conservative in that country and less socialist. Another thing that's important to understand is socialism. Marx was a conservative reactionary. Do you realize that? He didn't like the coming of democracy. Marx hated democracy. He believed in a ruling class. There are three classes in socialism. And there's a ruling class, and there's a class that's sort of like the intellectual class that gets the things done that the ruling class wants done, and then there's everybody else, like you and me. We're the ones who have to work the fields. We're not allowed to own any property, of course, but we have to work the fields. So, if you think things are so bad in this country, why don't you take a real hard look at what it's like in other countries? A real hard look. Could things be better in the United States? Of course they could. Of course they could. But things are the way they are, and all we can do is work for making things better, not worse. And when you impose more and more government, more and more taxes, more and more fees, more and more rules, more and more regulations, things don't get better. Look at it. People keep complaining about the way things are. Compare New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Compare New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Up here in New Hampshire, we refer to people from Massachusetts as massholes. And many Massachusetts residents acknowledge that's exactly what they are. Massachusetts, when you go to jail, you go to jail. When you go to prison, you go to prison. It is a far left state. They have huge numbers of rules, laws, and regulations, fees and taxes. So when somebody from Massachusetts comes to a place like New Hampshire where they can be more free because we have fewer laws and fewer regulations, fewer tax. We don't have a sales tax. We don't have a state income tax. People kind of like want to express themselves and be able to do things because they are free, because they can do it. But when you live in a situation where there's government, a bunch of rules, regulations, and you know, you're basically oppressed. And there was something else I was going to say on this point, see if I can remember it. But I lived in Texas. I've lived in quite a few places. Now in the United States, I've only lived in 2 places. But in the world, outside of the United States, I've lived in multiple places. Now here's what I was going to say. I remember when Obama took office, and people on the left, because remember, socialism is actually conservative, not leftist. Traditional, how do I say traditional? Classical liberalism is actually more leftist. And today, many people consider classical liberalism to be more conservative when it's actually not. But when Obama came into office, people were like, oh yeah, everything's going to be perfect now. When Bush came into office, the other side, because they're really not that different, people on the right were like, oh yeah, everything's going to be great now. When Trump came into office, people on the right, again, they were like, elated, everything's going to be great again. First of all, you don't understand the role of the president. The president has no power. The president can't make law. Only Congress can make the law. Executive orders. Do you know what executive orders are intended for? Executive orders are directives to those who work within the executive branch. They're not laws. They're not rules. They're not regulations. They only deal with those who work in the executive branch. And people don't know their history. People don't know economics. People don't know political science, etc., etc. And that's where the problem is again, go look up 100 Ways. Let's look at another one. Let's look at what happened in Waco, Texas. Okay? Think about it. Remember the hearings they had in Washington? What if it would have been Bush, or if it would have been Trump, who would have been in office at the time? It would the Republicans would have been saying the same sorts of things that the Democrats were saying at the time. They were defending Clinton. They defended him. I remember the Clinton administration. Clinton was still is a filthy, nasty human being. I think both of them are. The way they, especially Bill Clinton, treats women. But, you know, anybody that would treat anybody that way has serious problems. You know, but anyway, so, you know, next election, next time a new president comes in, everybody's going to be all elated again, and it's going to be, oh, everything's going to be great again, or everything's going to finally be great. No, it's not. The same policies are essentially going to continue. And I see it. Why don't you see it? Why don't more people see it? Some people do see it. Sadly, not enough. And sadly, some of the people that do see it are freaking nuts. Maybe you have to be crazy to see it. I don't know. But I mean, I know of people. I used to know some of these people here in New Hampshire, and some of them are no longer in New Hampshire. And let me tell you, those people are crazy. You don't want anything to do with them. Now, I won't get into that. You can see videos I've made on that subject without listening to me talk about it again on this one. But are Democrats 100% the same as Republicans? No. But I'd say 90% the same. I will try and provide a link to those two sources, 100 Ways, Obama and Bush, and 100 Way Dems and Repubs. I'll try and provide links to those. But just, you know, be open-minded about it. Go and actually look at the information. Don't prejudge. Be open. Don't say you're an open-minded person and then not be open-minded. Because most people, from my experience, who claim to be open-minded are some of the most closed-minded people I've ever come across. So, I will provide links. It's up to you to think. I cannot think for you. Have a good day.